Hey everyone, welcome to Encounters USA. If it's aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, or Dogman you're looking for, you came to the right place. Now listen up as we listen to some of the latest encounters. Hello everybody and welcome to Encounters USA. As we know, it is October and it is a special Dogman / Wolfen month. And today we have an amazing guest, a really exciting guest. It is Joedy Cook. He is an author and he's also the head of the North American Dogman Project. So who better to talk to about the Dogman Wolfen issue than Joedy Cook himself. So, Joedy Cook, welcome to Encounters USA.
Oh, glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's really an honor for you to be on the show. It's really nice for you to agree to do it. So let's just start off by talking a little bit about who is Joedy Cook.
Joedy Cook, let's see. Well, I'm an Iraq War veteran. Spent 20 years in the Army. I was a deputy sheriff for a few years before going in the Army. Was into the cryptid stuff. I really got into it heavy in about the 1980s. I did a lot of UFO research first, and then that's how I kind of got into the cryptid stuff, because we were getting a lot of UFO reports and things with cryptids involved. And so I kind of took that part and kind of went into it. And been doing it for, close to 30 years almost, just UFO and cryptid stuff. I really enjoy it. I had a really good time doing it, seen a lot of interesting stuff, talked to a lot of interesting people, and just, it kind of sticks with you, So I'm going to do this probably to the day I die.
Well, that's great. Yeah, Joedy, I kind of threw that. I kind of threw you out there, and I apologize for that.
No, not a problem.
Broad question. Yeah, as a veteran, of course, I'm also a veteran. I want to thank you for your service. And, I was talking to Johan, and it was really interesting because Johan and I were he was a Marine, and,
right?
Which I guess you can classify that as being in the service, but. Yeah. He was in at the same time as I was, so that was very interesting. And it sounds like you probably were too, but you did 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow. And I saw on your Facebook, that you were in the armor.
I was armor with the 3rd Cavalry Division, the 3rd ACR. I have a couple MOSs, but when I was in Iraq, what they did was kind of odd, is they put us in a convoy security, which gave us a bunch of Humvee or deuce and halves with plywood and sandbags, and with a 50 caliber or a Mark 10 or something on it, and and we did convoy security, and that was it. It was crazy. They used all the armor and everything for the regular armor units and things. So, but it wasn't bad. You're out in the open, so instead of being stuck in, a pillbox.
Oh, that's, you can't, people can't really imagine. I was in Riyadh, working training their National Guard. Mm-hmm. And, driving through those streets, anything can happen. And I don't think people really understand that sheer terror of.
We were going through Balad, or not Balad, but Basra, and they had all these civilians, and this kid ran up to the one of the vehicles and had a toy gun in his hand, and he goes in, he grabs the driver and puts a gun to his head, and he laughs and jumps. It's like you could have got shot, but the point of it is, we weren't allowed to do anything against any of the civilians. God forbid, you did anything. They're telling us, like, if you see them beat the children or beat the, women, you overlook it. And it's like, well, that's not the environment we live in. Yeah. So there was a lot of crazy stuff that took place over there. And, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. There's no other word for it but crazy. And, and the rules of engagement and just, we don't want to get too far into this, but even just you can't use a 50 caliber on people. So what, you just have to shoot at a building, and I don't even know how that would even work. So, well, let me, before we get into it, let me tell you one crazy thing about the Geneva Convention. Okay. That we were told. Now, if you're sleeping, I can walk up and put a bullet in your head. Okay. But if you're standing, walking like this, you're not a threat. I mean, how stupid is it? The guy sleeping is not the threat. The guy walking like this is the threat, because he's impaired. He's awake, and it's nuts. And, my whole thinking as a soldier is, if you have a rule book, you're going to fight wars. If you don't have a rule book, no one's going to fight a war. Mm-hmm. Okay, plain and simple. And that's my belief. And but I guess you have to have, show compassion for the person that's trying to kill you. Yeah, that's really crazy. But the craziest thing is that they turned the army into a police force. And lucky you had that experience. So, yeah. But, I'm sure that, because it was just a shock for me. I spent 13 years. Well, this is not military. I was in the Sinai during I was in the 82nd, but it's just a shock to, I really lived the culture. I didn't live in a base or whatever. I lived with these people.
Oh yeah.
Boy, it's there's some really good things and some really bad things about them. But boy, when you get them angry, they don't get happy anytime soon. So that's a pretty rough situation.
Yeah, it is. It is
crazy. All right, well, Jody, let's go on. And that's a pretty tough road to hoe, and you did 20 years of it. So good for you. So Jody, you are also an author, and you're quite prolific. And I'm just going to talk about the titles of your books. You are the author of, we'll start off with the Mothman case book. You've written a couple of Bigfoot books, but I don't want to get into them because we're talking about the Dogman or Wolfen, which we'll be talking about in a minute. But you have werewolves, the encounter with the black dog, Dogman werewolf encounters, werewolves, myths and legends, and I said the Mothman case book. Right. And the one we're going to talk a lot about today is the history of the Dogman. So am I leaving anything out as far as your Dogman genre?
No, that's about it.
Okay. So first thing is, we got to get this out of the way, Jody. I don't know if you've heard it or not, but I am pushing, it's a political move. I'm pushing for Dogman to be changed over to Wolfen. Any thoughts on that?
Well, the name Dogman, I mean, me personally, I think, man dog is probably more appropriate for the Dogman. Wolfen, it's a really neat name, but it has conflicts with werewolves. But with that being said, Dogman and werewolves, it's kind of the same thing as appearance, okay? But when people think of werewolves, they think of the 1941 Lon Chaney movie where a man, transfers into a werewolf. And I don't think anybody actually in the field actually believes in transformation, but yeah, Wolfen's a neat name. I mean, it is. I mean, there was a werewolf movie out called Wolfen, which was very, very interesting.
All right. Well, I got Yoan by the end of my podcast with him. I'd won him over to the thing. Now, people like you though would have the most to lose because you'd have to go and change
everything.
titles of all your books.
It's a lot. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So, but I'm pushing it. Actually sent an email to Whitley Strieber, and I'm trying to get him, because that is his book. Did not know that. I didn't know that was Whitley Strieber's book. I just knew about the movie from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent an email to him to try to get him behind the movement. Haven't heard anything back yet. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead. And what is your interest in? You talked a little bit about your interest in UFOs, and that's good because we need to talk about that a little later. But what's your interest in the Dogman?
Well, I was doing Bigfoot research for a long time, and back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was getting a lot of reports of a Bigfoot with a snout or pointed ears. And, the Dogman stuff in Ohio, wasn't big at all. I mean, we had the 1972 Defiance, Ohio case, which was a worldwide case. And then we had the, I'm trying to think what the London, Ohio case. And those are like the only two like Dogman werewolf type cases in Ohio. So I kind of didn't really connect a lot of the stuff together until I kind of was start getting a lot more reports on Dogman and going back looking at all my reports from the late 80s and 90s and seeing that what these people were seeing were actually Dogman. They weren't seeing a Bigfoot with a protrude snout or high pointed ears, backward type legs. They were actually seeing a Dogman. So we know they've been Dogman sightings, in Ohio, going back to the 1800s. And one particular area was Germantown, Ohio, where they have had, sightings going back, to the 70s, which they called it the Butter Street Monster. And Ohio is farmland. It's flat. It's cows. It's cornfields. That's Ohio. Okay. And when they were building Germantown, they put a road in called Butter Street that actually kind of like went into the woods. And it was an area where this thing was, and it would, people would see it all the time, and they call it the Butter Street Monster. Women who are my age remember seeing it as a kid, when they were young, and the parents bringing them in at night, wouldn't let them play out at night because they're afraid this thing was going to get the kid. I mean, it was a common thing, here in Germantown. So we've been getting all these reports. So they're just so overwhelming. I found them so interesting. I started North American Dogman Project by myself, the only person, back in 2006. Excuse me. So I didn't go online with it or anything. I was just collecting evidence and stuff, and then started getting more people in the group. And then probably about 2015, 2016 is actually when we made it official. Because we wanted to make sure before we went official on this that we had information that we could back up. And it grew so much. We have 630 members worldwide. We have chapters on every single continent. We're getting stuff from all over the world, which is interesting. I mean, we're getting stuff from Pakistan. We're getting stuff from India. We're getting stuff from Australia, New Zealand. It's wild, wild stuff. Everybody's seeing this thing.
Well, then, yeah, Jody, that's you've covered a lot of information there, and we are definitely going to go into a discussion of what this thing is. But as far as your background, did you grow up in Ohio?
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio.
So this stuff is all kind of firsthand experiences for you. Is that correct? I mean, like these were people you knew.
Well, no, a lot of these people in Ohio, I didn't know that was seeing these reports. I mean, I was getting them through friends who, it's like, well, my friend saw this, or my father saw this, or,
okay,
my uncle saw this. It was, and then you go talk to them and you get the information. You just, it's just amazing, some of the stuff.
Yeah. And so, but what did you you're a kid, what did you think it was? Did you think it was real, or it just, it's kind of like one of these werewolf kind of somebody's pulling at people's legs?
No, I mean, I talked to people, you knew they were BSing you. Okay. You knew it. And then you have some that were just, you can tell by their voice, by the look on their face, their expressions, that they saw something that absolutely terrified them. And the DNR here in Ohio knows about it. They're familiar. We've talked to guys who are members of the DNR. We talked to law enforcement that have seen these things. So they know it's real. They know there's something here. The Northeast of the United States is like the biggest hotspot, of Dogman sightings. In the United States.
But I grew up in the Northwest. Never heard of a Dogman until a couple of months ago, like right before I started this podcast. Never heard of a Dogman, but you knew about these things since the 1970s. So that seems really, really odd, doesn't it? And why do you think that is?
Well, it's not odd. We've got newspaper articles going back 100 years plus of these creatures, these dogmen that we're seeing. They were calling them like a man bear or a bear man. They were describing it as a bear or a wolf. But they're just a lot of these sightings. The best way to put it is a lot of these sightings are, I hate to use the word folklore, but legend is probably the best word, in small communities like Germantown, Ohio. They knew about this thing for years that it was there, but no one outside the community knew about it because the people who lived in these communities never told anybody about it. And now people are starting to open up, and you're hearing stuff from different communities, like the London, Ohio case, giving you for an example, the one that's there. No one ever knew about it because it stayed within the community. That was theirs. And they don't want outsiders coming in, bothering them about it. So that's why they kept it. But now we're to the point right now, it's not something you can just keep quiet anymore. People are losing livestock. They're losing their pets. They're scared to death when they see these things. So it's not something that, stays in the family.
Right. Yeah, I watched so many of these things. I forget the name. It was something about like the Beast of Bray Road, whatever.
Right.
And they just showed these people that they'd had an encounter and they'd publicized it. And the people that showed up with their guns and the beer and the people have more to fear from those people than.
Yeah. I mean, the crowd that's out there is more dangerous that you have to worry about. And that's part of the reason why, these small communities or towns don't ever say anything. I mean, even today, you go on Bray Road, okay, the people that live along Bray Road, they don't want to talk to outsiders about it. They don't want you on their property. Yeah. If they see you going up and down Bray Road, they'll call the police. Yeah. I mean, even though they don't know you're looking for the beast, but you're out of place there. And you go to talk to someone, unless you're from that community or from that state, they're not going to talk to you, because that is theirs. And they don't want outsiders coming in to either try to harm it, publicize it, make money off of it, or whatever. They don't want the aggravation.
So, Jody, we have to talk about this first. You talked a little bit about the werewolf, and you've got a couple of books about werewolves, but werewolves are not this, correct?
Well, the thing,
and I mean, let me say that because I don't want to sound like I don't know anything in the world.
I know what you're saying. When I did the one on werewolves, myths, and legends, that was basically based on folklore and legends of what people are seeing. And you have to understand, when people see something like a Dogman or a Wolfen, okay, they're going to describe it as a werewolf, okay, because that's all they know to describe it as, what they see in the movies or what they see in the description. That's just it. What that book was basically based on is just legend. And I talk a little bit in there about, the Skinwalker, so it kind of goes into all those different types of legends that's in Native American culture or in, the white, I hate to use the word white culture, but, Western culture, so that's basically what that one was about. So people can read the book. They can sit there and look at all these old legends and stuff that's from, United States, a little bit from around the world in Native American culture. And they can decide themselves, is this, what people are actually seeing? Is it a Dogman, or is it something that they're seeing and they're just classifying it as a werewolf?
Right. All right. So I have a couple of obscure questions that I'm going to throw at you. And I think we talked about it a little bit when we were messaging each other. And one of your books is called Encounter with the Black Dog.
Right.
And why did you choose Black Dog as a title?
Well, Black Dog is a law enforcement code name for Dogman. Okay. I mean, this is a nationwide code name. We talked to a lot of different law enforcement across the country that sent reports into us. Even the DEA had the name Black Dog, and that's their code. It's like Bigfoot is a black cow.
Right.
So when they're doing calls over the radio, they're not going to say, look, we got a werewolf or we got a Dogman, because the media monitors all their calls. So they'll use the phrase a black dog or a black cow. Okay, and the media is too stupid to catch on, even though they know what it is, but they're just too stupid to catch on to it. And that's how they get away from doing it. So that's why I use that title, because it's an interesting name.
Well, it's also interesting because I'm looking for, I asked you this, the Led Zeppelin has a song on Led Zeppelin 4 called Black Dog.
Black Dog.
And I wonder because I was trying to get at, is there any connection to England or, Europe with this Black Dog nomenclature, I guess you call it. And I wasn't sure about that Black Dog in law enforcement, but I had heard that on one like Dogman or Encounters or Bigfoot Chronicles. Mm-hmm. And so, I guess that is true. So
the British call it.
Now that the cat or the dog or Dogman or even Wolfen is out of the bag, maybe they'll have to change it.
Yeah, well, the thing of it is that the British and the Europeans, they call it a werewolf. Mm-hmm. Traditional type Van Helsing style werewolf. The Canadians, they either call it a werewolf or they call it a Dogman. So they use both of that. Here in the States, we just call it Dogman.
Okay.
They don't call it too much a werewolf unless you get a report where someone says, yes, this is what we saw.
Well, when I am talking about the Dogman, I always assume people know more about Led Zeppelin than they actually do. But Jimmy Page was a student of devil worshiper Aleister Crowley. Mm-hmm. And so what would Aleister Crowley know about the Black Dog? Or, what is the Black Dog according to Led Zeppelin or Aleister Crowley? So just something to think about. But let me just ask you this, since we're...
Let me answer that, because we've got quite a few reports of individuals that were seeing the Black Dog wearing cloaks in cemeteries. Okay, and around cemeteries and in cemeteries, people who do devil worshiping they will do it in cemeteries, or they do it around a cemetery. So we've got reports here in the States, we've got reports in Canada, we got reports in Europe of these black dogs wearing cloaks in cemeteries. So they don't know if these black dogs are protecting the spirits in the cemetery, or they are keeping the spirits from leaving the cemetery. So, I mean, it's hard to understand. And, I listened to the song when you told me about that, and it, I'm coming to the conclusion that's probably what he's talking about.
Mhm. Yeah, everything. I mean, all the stuff that they write about, it's generally got a purpose.
It has purpose.
What I want to throw in Skinwalker Ranch, and I'll just do it now since you brought up this thing about, you said cloaks. Like, what do you mean cloaks? Like
hooded cloaks, like a cloak of
not
cape.
like a trench coat.
No, like a cape with a hood.
Like one of the old style, keep yourself warm.
Or cloaks, yeah. You would see in Renaissance. Yeah.
Okay, because all right, and then there's on your book, the history of the Dogman. On the cover, you have an interesting picture of a dog. It's a dog. I mean, or Wolfen, but it's attacking a person. I think it's eating it. What's the history of that?
That goes back to the medieval times. There was, let me kind of read back here. There was a battle that the Christians had with a group of dog-headed men. Okay, and that's one of the arts from the battle that was put in through the Vatican. So one of the dog-headed soldiers were the only survivor. He was captured, and he was taught Christianity, and he promoted Christianity, he loved Christianity, and the Catholic Church gave him a sainthood, which is St. Christopher. The St. Christopher we all pray to. Okay, so what the Catholic Church did when they gave him a sainthood, and there's original photographs and original paintings in the Vatican today of St. Christopher with a dog head. But they removed his dog head and gave him a human head because Christians are not going to pray to a pagan, animal-headed saint. So that's how that all came about. And that's what it goes back and it talks about the dog-headed men. That was in Greece, dog-headed men through the Vikings had contact with, dog-headed men that in the Middle East, where you talk like Anubis, there was a race of dog-headed men in Egypt that traded with the people of Egypt for different things. And now, you kind of have to wonder where all these races of dog-headed men, they're gone. Why have they gone? And that was the mystery of it. And the book kind of goes into all the history of dog-headed men through Christianity, through Viking folklore, through Egyptian folklore. And it's a very interesting book. And it really, like I say, it really goes back into a lot of history about that. It was a lot of research that was put into that book.
Boy, yeah, that's the history of the Dogman, and I definitely recommended reading, almost required reading for this podcast. That St. Christopher thing, that just blows me away. I can't tell you enough. Since I've been doing this podcast, I've learned so many things. And that's really amazing. I had heard that I think that the people of India were trading with a race of dogmen or something on one of these Dogman Chronicle or Dogman Encounter episodes. I had not heard about the Vikings and
the Viking folklore. There were actually tablets that were found of like artwork of Vikings in battle with dog-headed men. And I think I have a picture of it, one of the tablets that were found in that book. The thing of it is about the Vikings, this was like one particular thing that they did not really express out in writing or in, any type of carving or anything like that, like the sea monsters and things like that they've seen. This was one particular thing because I think they feared them, and that's why they really didn't talk about it that much. Or just real little bit about information when you research the Viking contact with dog-headed men. There's not that much out there, and like I said, I think there was a reason for that because they feared them, and they didn't look at Christianity. They had their own type of God, and I think that they felt if these were demons, and you don't promote that, but it was part of their culture. So yeah, they did put something in there about it, but it's not a whole lot of information out there.
Okay, and then the thing that I have to ask you, and is Dogman, is this Dogman / Wolfen? Is he? Are they speaking? Are they speaking to these people? How do they communicate?
Yeah, they had their language. Like the St. Christopher. When I did the research, I went to the Catholic Church, and I talked to people that were connected to the Vatican about this, and they've all said that this particular entity was able to speak English. They were that intelligent. They were able to speak English. When you look at Egyptian culture, and even in the Viking, they even talked about they were able to speak their language. But they had a language of their own also, but they were able to speak it.
All right. Well, that's very interesting. And then if they could speak then obviously they could speak now. But all right. So Jody, let's get into this. So we should maybe have talked about this before. Describe the Dogman that you're talking about. Features, height, weight.
The dog
team.
You're talking about this Dogman and ancient Dogman, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Well, if they're
just a Dogman in particular,
if they're all different, then we should know that.
Well, see, here's the thing. When you go back and you look at the Dogman from St. Christopher, okay, and that particular era, he had a human body with the dog's head. King Lycan from Greece had a human body but a dog head. Okay, the Vikings, same thing, human body, dog head. But you have to look at it this way. When they interpret something that stands like a man, had 2 arms, 2 legs, fingers and toes, it's a human body. Okay, that's how they described it. Okay, did it actually have a human type body? Probably not. But the uniformity of the body was human. I mean, do you kind of see what I'm saying here?
But it's bipedal. It stands
by being bipedal. So, and I think that's what when they say human body, that's what they look at.
Okay. But the encounters that we have today, we're talking Arnold Schwarzenegger, is that the same thing that these people are looking at? Because when you look at the difference in height between people today, back then, people were like lucky to be 5'5".
Right.
And if you're looking at an 8 or 9 foot creature, that's twice as tall as you, and girth, etc. That is nothing but a monster. So how in a battle, whatever, these obviously can't be the same kind of creatures.
No, because the ones in ancient were always the same characteristic, same size, height of human man. Okay. Now, the ones today, I don't look at the ones in ancient history like Anubis, King Lycan, and St. Christopher as the same ones today. Okay. This is my personal view. Okay. And it's not the view of the organization, and it's not the view of people in the community, but this is my personal view. These ancient ones, I believe, were extraterrestrial. Okay. I truly believe they were extraterrestrial because they were involved in so many different cultures. And the fact that we have 0 physical evidence that they existed other than oral history, text history, things like that. Okay. That's it. So that's my belief. They're extraterrestrial, and I'll tell you why. Because we received a lot of reports from U.S. and Canadian soldiers and European soldiers that have seen these things in combat zones.
Wait a minute. What was that? What was in combat? What?
In combat zones, in conflicts. Yeah. They've actually seen these things, and they describe them as a wolf's head with human body, but they're wearing some type of like body armor.
Wow.
And we got a lot of reports. Canadians, one Canadian soldier actually described the one he saw as looking like Anubis, a large wolf wearing like a cloth around its waist that was similar to what Egyptian pharaohs wore. Wow. And this was in Afghanistan is where he saw this one at.
And whose side were they on?
Huh?
Whose side?
Well, here's the interesting thing. I only have one story from U.S. personnel that has had a conflict with them. The other soldiers around, U.S., Canadian, European soldiers who served in Afghanistan all said that they were encountering them in conflict with the insurgents.
I didn't. Can you repeat that?
That they were in conflict with the insurgents, not NATO or U.S. Canadian troops.
Okay.
Those are the reports that we got from the Canadian guys. And the U.S. guys. I only got one report, and actually was in Iraq. That was in Baghdad, where guys from 82nd Airborne that were there at Camp Victory they were on one. They had a visual post on top of a building, and they had their night vision out, and they saw a large dog going down the street. And he said the dog ended up standing up and was walking on two legs, and then it started to run. And at that time, there was two insurgents that were actually coming out from an alleyway, and it killed both of them. Right there in the streets of Baghdad. And there was like, they were like, he said, man, this was a werewolf, man. He was so excited the way he was describing. He said this thing was on all fours, huge. They thought it was a horse at first. It was so big. And they were able to get complete detail of this thing. And they only saw from behind. They saw the tail. They saw the high pointed ears. They saw the snout. And it killed the two insurgents. So we're getting all these stories. So, are in the Middle East, do these things still exist in the Middle East, and they're in low numbers or keeping stuff hidden? Are they part of the ancient, stories that we have on Dogman? It very well could be. But are they an extraterrestrial species that we don't know about yet? I talked to one guy that he was a former Special Forces. He was part of a UFO recovery team. That was his job. And everybody that was on that recovery team were either former SEALs, Special Forces, Rangers, Air Force combat controllers, things like that, special operation guys from all the different units. And that was their job, was to recover. And he was telling me that there was a species that the U.S. got in contact with in the 1970s, which was a canine species that were like wolves. They were predators. They did wear body armor. Okay. But they were so dangerous. They had a few of them in captivity, but they were so dangerous they wouldn't keep them in the United States. They kept them in South America. And he didn't say where in South America. But from what he was describing, I think it was probably Honduras. And we had a U.S. military facility down there. They kept them down there. They got loose. They killed people inside their compound. They got out. They killed a few people in a town, and they had to go down and take care of the situation. And he described them. They were wearing body armor. They were a predator type species, and it was a new species that we've got in contact with. And we haven't had too much contact with them, but they're extremely dangerous. And that's the way he described it. He said they were worse than the reptilians.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
Jody, I'm going to jump in here and say that is exactly what remote viewer John Vivanco said about the chupacabra.
yeah.
Is that are you talking about the chupacabra, or is this a species of dogman?
No, he said it was a canine species.
But it's probably the chupacabra.
No.
Mm-hmm.
These were captured here in the United States.
Oh, captured. Okay.
They moved them to a facility in South America because they were too dangerous to keep in the United States.
Wow.
Okay. But he said they were canine. They were wolf.
Okay.
He said they were like a werewolf. He said, just imagine a werewolf, like the movie The Howling, and put body armor on them. He said that's what these things were.
So are you talking real body armor they're wearing, like manufactured? It's
No,
not like from their body.
He described the body armor like Halo, like they wore in the Halo, in the video game Halo. That's the way he described it. It was some type of astronaut type garment.
Okay.
But they were able to breathe their air. Okay. So that means that either their environment was the same, as ours, if they were able to breathe the air. So then we said, okay, so we have these things from ancient time. We have reports of extraterrestrials looking like dogmen, looking like werewolves. So, and the ones we have here now, are these things extraterrestrial? That come here to hunt? Or are these things that they mated with wolves because they're able to blend in with them, and they mated with wolves? So the dogmen we have now are, offsprings of extraterrestrial or wolf. We don't know. You can only assume because of the stories that are, that in the reports that you're getting, from people. So it's hard. Honestly, it's hard to say if is Dogman a flesh and blood, is he supernatural, or is he extraterrestrial? There's just not enough evidence out there to come to a total conclusion. Me personally, I think the ones we deal with are flesh and blood. I think they've always been here. I don't think they've had any connection to the ones from the past. Unless these are, leftover generations of them. Even the Native Americans even talk being in contact with, some type of dog-headed men.
Right.
So, like I said, it's just there's just so much information out there. It's so much to absorb to really get a clear answer of what is what.
Well, I think that's correct, but I think that you've basically said that there are. I mean, let's just establish what we think is true, and I agree 100% with you about the old ones, the old time ones. They were around, but they're not around anymore.
Correct.
And they don't, if they were going to be interacting with humans, the difference between the ones today and the ones back then, that was different. That was obviously a different species, right. Whatever. And I agree with that. So then that brings up, where did these, the ones that we're seeing now, where did these ones come from? And I just want to go back to that chupacabra thing. Remote viewer John Vivanco said that they had remote viewed this thing that turned out to be the chupacabra, but that it was manufactured. It wasn't a real species. It was developed by like weapons, whatever, and it got out. And so that's why the chupacabra was around. And he said that when it has its babies, they have to run away before it eats them. It's that horrible. So anyway, so I just wanted to say that about the chupacabra to clear that part up. So then you talk about a Dogman that looks, and I'll flash a picture on the screen in post production, but we're talking about how tall is this thing standing on two legs?
Which one?
The one today, not the old time one.
The one
like the guys are seeing in Iraq.
Well, the ones that the guys were seeing, the one that the guys saw in Iraq, they couldn't determine the size. They knew it was big. It was much larger than what the insurgents had killed. The ones in Afghanistan, they said they were about 7 feet. 7 feet. They were just a little bit taller than the man. Now, the ones that Canadians saw, they said this thing was about 10 feet.
Wow.
Definitely 10 feet. It was that big. And that was kind of interesting story because they're in Kandahar. And that's the funny thing. All these sightings all took place in the Kandahar Valley. Every one that we've got. So that's kind of interesting. Now the Canadians were saying that they were in a trench, okay, and they're in Kandahar, and there was a bunch of children out there was playing, and then all of a sudden, let me go back. There was a building there, okay, and the children were playing by the building, by the corner of the building. They started running, screaming, and then a pack of dogs start coming out. Well, they thought, these dogs are going, after the kids, because the dogs over there, same thing with Iraq, you had to kill them when they ran in packs because they would eat you. So they start killing the dogs, okay? And then the dogs started to pass the children, okay? So they weren't sure if there was anything more coming out. So what one of them did was pop smoke over there to kind of deterrent if there was any more dogs. And they said this large Dogman comes out from the smoke, wearing this like pelt that was kind of like Egyptian looking, and comes out of the smoke and looks at them. So they start firing on it. They didn't hit it. They didn't kill it, but it's kind of like stood there. I was firing at them while they were firing at it, and it showed no fear. And then it kind of went back to where it was. And they said it was the strangest situation that they ever seen. But, they don't know. But here's the thing. Every one of these sightings, there was either a blue light or a blue flash prior or after these sightings, which either it's a portal opening or closing, or it's extraterrestrial. Who's to say? I don't know. But every one of these sightings, that we've got from, soldiers from around the world that have seen these things, in Afghanistan, always talked about the blue light flash.
All right. So, Jody, let me just ask you to maybe be a defense lawyer for the government and convince me that these things are not ours. These are not weapons that we've developed in some lab somewhere.
No, I don't think they are. I'll be honest with you. I don't think they are. I think that, these things are flesh and blood. They've always been here. How they got here, we have no idea. Okay? Because there's no fossil record of them. Okay? So it's hard to say where they are, where they came from. Is there an extraterrestrial species that is canine? Why not? Okay. I mean, who's to say? Not all of them are little gray guys. Even George Lucas put a werewolf alien, in the bar scene, in Star Wars. How did he know, about that, a werewolf type alien? You have to go back and think. George Lucas had a lot of friends that worked for NASA that were in some very high places. And George admitted that he's seen things that no one else in NASA saw when he did Star Wars. A couple examples. Back in the 90s, there was this picture floating around of a ship inside of a crater on the moon. And it looked a lot like the Millennium Falcon. Okay. And Richard Hoagland wrote a book called Dark Mission. I'm telling you, this is a must-read book. Okay. It talks about all the stuff that NASA found on the moon and Mars. Okay. And in one particular, and he has a color photograph of this on the back of his book. Well, it was one of the Apollo missions. I believe it might have been Apollo 11 that found a crater with a crash site in a crater on the moon. And there was part of a robot that was there. And like you said, there's a color picture of it, and the head is identical to CP30. I am not kidding you. The only difference is the mouth is red. That's the only difference. And he has a color picture of it on the back of his book. And he has also have a picture of it in the book. And it's an official NASA photograph. Okay. So, and then you go back looking at George Lucas. Well, this thing looked a lot like CP30. That was, that was found on the moon. The Millennium Falcon looks a lot like this craft that was found, on the moon. And here we are. We have a werewolf type alien sitting in a bar. Okay. And if you go back and you look at all the books that was printed on the characters of Star Wars from the late 1970s to the 80s, they actually show the werewolf wearing body armor. Okay, and I actually have that photograph from Lucasfilms of the character that was drawn for that character, and he is wearing body armor. So that's interesting.
Right, Jody. Now, you must have been reading my books. I don't know where you get your ideas from, but that's one of the big things that I've been talking about since I've been doing this podcast. And is that it's also Spielberg as well, is that why when, what I talk about has to do more with Bigfoot, but why is Bigfoot flying around in a spaceship? And do you remember that and this is not a Bigfoot show, but do you remember when they had in 1973 in Indiana and Pennsylvania around Kecksburg, there's that ridge, and they had all these UFOs and Bigfoot sightings.
Yeah.
And then in 76, you got Steve Austin, the $6 million man, fighting Bigfoot, the alien, and then you've got Chewbacca on Star Wars in 77. So pretty interesting. But I point out the fact that Spielberg and Lucas are both Freemasons, and who better to keep these things secret than the Freemason organization?
I was a Freemason. Okay, mm-hmm. I don't practice anymore. Okay, but let me tell you something about.
Don't tell me anything because they'll come after you.
No, my point. What I'm trying to say is that this whole theory that the Masons are behind, the one world government and things like that. As a former Mason, I laugh. Okay, because what Masons in Ohio do are different what the Masons in Kentucky and Indiana does. Right. What Masons in the United States do is different from what Masons in Europe do. Okay. So the fact that we all are independent on the way things are done doesn't work when you try to unite to run, to rule the world. Okay. So, I mean, it's that's my point is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Okay. Is that, every everyone does it different. Okay. So in order to run the world, everybody has to be in sync, and we're not. Okay. So
yeah. Well, the only reason that I bring that up is because number one is that all these things are in their movies. And
right.
number two, if you look at the first, you'd almost say the Majestic 12, the first people that got involved in 1952 after merry-go-round, all Freemasons, almost all of them were Freemasons. And the only thing that I point out is that who better to keep a secret than somebody that promises that they'll keep a secret, or you can kill them. So
right.
That would motivate me to keep a secret, and you can't argue with the fact that all the people that are involved with, or a lot of the people are definitely Freemasons.
When Richard Hoagland wrote Dark Mission, he brings that subject very end, showing that how many people in NASA were Freemasons, how many astronauts were Freemasons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he ties that in, and that's what makes it so, incredible, is that, how the Freemasons just basically they run things, but like I said, I've never seen that. I never saw anything to make me believe that, there's a conspiracy in Freemason.
Yeah. I'm a Latter-day Saint. They say the same things, but there are avenues within the Freemason organization.
Oh yeah.
That would allow, like P2 in Italy, that, killed God's banker and then found out, Bush and all these people were laundering all this money and from drugs and everything through this organization. And it was allowed because everybody was kept silent, Right. As long as you have these silent, organizations, then I think you'll always have, people that are going to be able to get away with evil. But let's leave the Freemasons alone, except for the last thing I want to say, and that is that in the movie, the last Raiders of the Lost Ark thing, Indiana Jones, is at the end of it when they run into the crystal skull-headed aliens, and they make the statement that knowledge is their treasure. And he's not talking about the aliens. He's talking about Freemasons.
Freemasons, yeah.
So that's, if you look at our education system, degrees, et cetera, and I go into a lot of detail in that in my book about that.
Yeah, but you have to understand. 180 years ago, if you were a Mason, they knew you were a Mason, they would have killed you. It was one of these things for the longest time. They had to meet in secrecy. They couldn't tell anybody they were Masons because, you could have got killed being a Mason.
Yeah. I think at a certain time, especially after that thing happened with that guy they killed in 1812 or whatever, that was 1820s, that Joseph Smith married his widow. All right, well, let's leave the Freemasons alone for now, and let's just leave that as, somebody who definitely has the power to cover things up. So, all right. Skinwalker Ranch, can we get in our 4-wheel drive and take a trip over there for a little bit?
Yeah, that's Utah is a unique area, especially the Four Corners. But Skinwalker Ranch, I've got a lot of friends that do research out there, and what we're finding out is there's a lot of stuff that's going on the Skinwalker Ranch, but there's a lot more that's going on outside the Skinwalker Ranch. Okay. People are seeing large canines out there, which they're describing as dire wolves. Okay. And, where they're going through different portals, or they appear through like a glowing light, who knows,
Jody, can I ask you, the dire wolf is not the Dogman or Wolfen, correct?
Right. A dire wolf was a very large wolf that's extinct. Okay.
And what's the date? Because I keep hearing 10,000 or 10 million years. It couldn't be 10 million.
No, it's probably about anywhere from 10 to 15,000 years ago.
Right.
But a lot of people believe that the Dogman today is a descendant of the dire wolf. Who knows? It's hard to say. But with that being said, what people are seeing in the Skinwalker Ranch area is what they're describing as a dire wolf. Now, you have reports where this thing's on all fours, a very large wolf, about the size of a cow. Okay. Then you get reports of this thing walking on two legs, like a dogman. But what I find interesting, most of the reports of it being on all fours are within the Skinwalker Ranch area. The ones that are walking on two legs bipedal are outside of the Skinwalker Ranch. Okay, you following me here?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So we're finding that out in research because, I mean, you do have one or two small ones that's inside the area and outside, but the majority itself of the ones who are bipedal are outside the surrounding of the Skinwalker Ranch area.
Right. So can I just point out that encounter, there were two researchers that were driving up and they saw the two guys in trench coats smoking cigarettes and wearing fedoras and standing in the middle of the road. And then as they approached them, things turned around and they were dogs. You know about that one?
No, actually, I never heard that story.
They were wearing trench coats, wearing fedoras. They threw their cigarettes down and walked into the woods. And my first question is, did they grab the butts for DNA samples? I don't know what happened after that, but that's very interesting what you're saying, because this was off the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying is, the big ones are actually on the ranch. So, maybe, we kind of have, I agree with you. I think there's different kinds, but these guys in the trench coats, they could be your Anubis. I didn't get a description if he looks like that crime dog or if he looks like Anubis, or if they look like Anubis, but maybe that is the old god, moving around in UFOs, and maybe they have something to do with that other one. But when it comes to the other one, the only thing that I have to say about it is that we don't know everything that went extinct in the last ice age. The mammoths were pretty big. The saber-toothed tigers were pretty big.
Right.
There's something that was able to walk around bipedally that we just haven't found yet, but it lived and is somehow able to cross over into this time.
It's hard saying, are they portals, black holes, that these things can cross into? It very well could be, we just don't know. Mm-hmm. There's just, like I said, there's just not a lot of, evidence out there that we can sit there and study. We hear stories that, one particular story, there was the guy walking his dog, and this guy was jogging, and the dog was looking at the jogger, and he's, looking at the jogger too. And he said, it's like he disappeared, like he went into a portal, and he was flabbergasted. He watched the guy literally disappear. So is that a possibility? Very well. I mean, we live in a very mysterious world. I really do. I think there's forces on this planet we just don't understand. Right. And, I don't know. It's scary.
Yeah. Well, Jody, the reason I do aliens and Bigfoot and Dogman is because I think they're all very much related, and it does have to do with the fact that as they said on that George Knapp said, or that on that Skinwalker Ranch, they said the Skinwalker Ranch is a place where the Earth is thin. I think the Earth is getting thinner, and I want to ask you that. What is the future of Dogman or Wolfen? Are we seeing more of them as time goes on?
Oh yeah, I mean our sightings have gone up tremendous each year. You know, I mean we're probably 70% more this year than we were 2 years ago on the amount of sightings. I mean they just keep coming up and up and up.
Yeah, that's what I when I was listening to Dogman Encounters, I think the podcast is, and that is Vic Cundiff. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's pretty good. And,
yeah, I've been on the show a couple of times.
And boy, I spent so much time trying to think of the podcast host, I forgot what I was going to say. I absolutely forgot what I was going to say. The idea of Dogman, because they're not always here, just like the Bigfoot. So you think that they have the ability to move interdimensionally?
I don't know. We did a podcast one night where we asked viewers, okay, what do you think Dogman is? Do you think he's flesh and blood, extraterrestrial, or supernatural? And believe it or not, a lot of people believe supernatural. He's supernatural. He's able to go through portals. He's able to appear and disappear. He's able to cloak himself. You know, I just haven't seen any evidence of it. You know, the evidence that we see is that it's flesh and blood, and we have some evidence to see that, you know, it is extraterrestrial, and then we have some evidence to see that it's supernatural. But, you know, the flesh and blood is more, there's more evidence proving that than the other ones, if you see what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. You know, but a lot more people actually believe it's more supernatural.
Yeah, I shy away from that. I gotta have nuts and bolts and science to back things up. And what I was actually trying to get at was the idea about Bigfoot, Dogman, and aliens being somehow related to each other. And when I was, I did a thing on the Skinwalker Ranch a couple podcasts ago, and the thing that I found out is that when there were things that happened that were weird, there was always high electromagnetism. And so if you look into physics, if you look into like the unified field theory, et cetera, you know that time and space and gravity are all interrelated, and all of them can be manipulated with excessive amounts of electromagnetism. Bob Lazar talks about that with his UFOs. And you see it with these things appearing. You see it associated with Bigfoots. So I don't think you need supernatural abilities. I think it's all just science that we don't really understand. I don't know that the Dogman or the Wolfen is practicing this kind of science. I think somebody around him might be sending him back and forth, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard saying. It really is.
Yeah. That's the thing. It is hard saying, but by using the idea that they are associated with UFOs, it's like what they call in Shakespeare the Deus ex machina. It kind of gives you an out for any situation. Well, why don't you see it? Because it's off in another dimension. It's off with the UFO people. So it's a handy escape, but I think if you start to look at it from the idea of electromagnetism and the things that we do understand, I think that it starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, great.
Well, all right, Jody. So let me ask you. We've talked about the future of Dogman and or Wolfen, and you think that Wolfen is increasing. Is Wolfen the Skinwalker?
No, I think like the Wendigo and the Skinwalker is something completely different. Give you an example. I mean, I talked to a Native American out in Utah, and he was telling me, that the Skinwalker, when you go back to Native history, it's somebody that was able to put a skin on and they transform into that particular character. Okay. Now, did they actually do it? Well, who knows? Through culture, they believe it did. What he's telling me is that now what skinwalkers basically are, if I have a feud with you, okay, and over land because we're connected to each other and water's running through there, and I don't like the idea that you're blocking the water off where I can't get any of it. Well, I'm going to call a skinwalker in, and either he's going to come in and put a mojo on you, scare you, or he's going to kill you. And that's exactly what he said. And they're problem solvers for them. It's not like how it was 100, 200 years ago. And that's the way he expressed it. Yeah. The people who are skinwalkers now are just somebody that puts a skin on. And, but in Native American culture, it's very serious.
Yeah.
It's not a laughing matter.
Call them lawyers.
Yeah, they're basically like, a hitman lawyer, but that's the way they explained it to me, which I thought was, wow, I never heard that before. And he goes, well, because that's our culture. We keep that to ourselves. I mean, Christ, if we send somebody in to go, knock off somebody, you think we're going to let that out? Yeah. But like you said, it's just, I don't think he's a dogman. I never thought he was a dogman. I just thought it was some type of folklore. The Wendigo, same thing. The Wendigo is the Native American version of the devil that's able to possess you and make you kill, make you do things. That's the only difference. That's their version of the devil. So those two entities have nothing to do with Dogman. But I did put it in my book because there are a few situations that could have been Dogman related and was interpreted to be a skinwalker or interpreted to be a Wendigo. Mm-hmm. So, but like you said, all that stuff is in interpretation.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Jody, Yoan and I went out and did an investigation in Monroe in Washington State. I wouldn't think there would be a Dogman Wolfen incident out here. Do you think that they're like spreading out, or do you think that maybe they've always been here?
I think they've always been there. It's just, sightings are going more and more. Is it because of, we're building more into their area? A lot more people are going into their area.
Yeah.
That's the possibility.
Okay, so I want to, I think we're kind of getting short on time here, but when Yoan and I went out and investigated this Dogman incident or Wolfen, it crossed a road, where traffic goes pretty fast.
Right.
It crossed one lane and then it got hit by a car in the next lane. Mm-hmm. And I would wonder what the heck was it thinking? And one thing that I just want to throw out here, and I'm not, this is just pure speculation, but okay, so it went and attacked something that was going about 60 miles an hour. Its headlights moving on a road, and predators attack things that move, right?
Right.
So if this thing is not from here, and it's just popped in. It doesn't know what a car is, and it sees something moving very fast, and I think it attacked it. I think it went to grab it, and that's how it got hit. And it's just a theory of mine, but I don't think it had any idea what it was even doing. And then it got hit, and you can see the rest of the encounter on the video. But I think that's a fine example of something popping out of another dimension and not really knowing where it is,
where it's at or what it's seeing exactly.
Yeah. Well, all right. So, Jody, I don't want to keep you all day. Are you going to write any more books? Do you have anything else in the works?
No, I think I'm done. With putting the books in, unless something dramatic happens and evidence-wise or something like that, I want to get out, then I would consider doing it. But at this point in time, I have no future on doing books right now.
Okay.
I put a lot of them out, and I just, I got a grandson, now I need to spend time with him and things. And, I did, what's going on with the North American Dogman project is just taking up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet. Well, it's really this has to be the most interesting podcast I've done so far. Some of these stories are incredible. So go ahead and look at Jody's books. I'm going to have the links to your books on Amazon and wherever they are. I'll have those in my comment section on the YouTube video. And Jody, do you have any parting words for our listeners or viewers?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in North American Dogman Project, just go to NorthAmericanDogmanProject.com or just Google Dogman/werewolf, and it will come up. Join. We have we send stuff out and through email a lot. I started a newsletter. I haven't done it in a month or a month and a half. I just had so much stuff going on. So I'm going to be putting another newsletter out. We have podcasts on our site that you can watch. We're going to be doing a podcast at the end of the month for Halloween that we're going to be putting out some really good information on that. Just like you said, any questions, send us a message. You can look for us on Facebook under North American Dogman Project or just me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Jody, do you have any words of advice for researchers that are actually going out looking for them?
Yeah, I do. Safety before research. Okay, that's the main thing. Safety comes first. If you're going out to the field for a day, for a couple hours, be prepared. I always tell everybody that take a pack with you. Be prepared for a couple of days. Stuff happens. Okay, make sure you got enough food on you. Water that will last a couple of days. If something happens, you get trapped, you get hurt, you get lost, let somebody know where you're going to be. Always let someone where you're going to be. Second of all, never go out by yourself. Okay. When you're doing Dogman research, always have somebody with you. That's the best thing. I don't suggest carrying a firearm, out there, but if you're, certified, to carry one, that's fine, but safety first. You can do your research properly when you do safety first, and then when you join, we have a really beautiful field manual that we did. It's almost 200 pages. It's really, really nice, and it tells you everything you need to know when you go to the field, how to conduct an investigation, how to talk to witnesses, what's the best type of equipment to use at a cheap price. And when you join, you get a copy of it, safety first. That's my big thing.
All right, Jody, that is some fantastic advice. And I have a little advice for my listeners and viewers out there as well. Halloween is getting closer. Things are getting a little bit more spooky. So when you're out, either in the woods looking for dogmen or just out in the general world, take Jody's advice and take my advice as well. Always watch your back.
There you go.
Thanks for listening to tonight's show. Please remember, if you've had an encounter, we want to hear about it. Go ahead and email us at encountersusa1@gmail.com or contact us at encountersusa.com, our website, and go to the contact form. All right, everybody. Until next time, be careful out there. And if you're out in the woods, watch your back.